Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Backlot Banter. My name is Tucker Hazel, and this is a review of Materialists. Today, I am joined by my co-host, Tanner Dykstra, who has no love or soul in his heart. We're here to talk about Materialists. Celine Song is back. She's got Dakota Johnson. She's got Chris Evans. She's got Pedro Pascal. There's cool people, hot people coming out of every which way. Tanner,
I can't believe it. They're coming out of every crack and crevice.
Yeah. We should get an exterminator.
Oh, man.
Tanner, we've now seen Materialists, which is marketed as a rom-com.
I would say
but
so.
I think that's a lie.
Yes.
There's not a lot of funny stuff in this movie, which is not necessarily a bad thing. But
No.
I was just like, I was talking to someone about this after. I'm like, so where were the funny moments?
Yeah.
So,
There's a couple of jokes.
There are a couple. Yeah. But, so, what do you think of the Materialists?
Tucker, first of all, drop the just Materialists. It's cleaner.
Was it ever called the Materialists?
I don't think so.
Was. Oh, well, you know.
Well, potentially, but currently it is not. But Tucker, currently, my thoughts on the film are this. I think it's good. I think it's quite sweet and quite saccharine, of course, as most of your romance dramas are going to be. I don't really have a lot of overt complaints about it. I think that it is, as you mentioned, quite a bit different than the film I had imagined this was going to be going in. It does do a sort of like Prince and the Pauper kind of thing with a love triangle a little bit. But it's ultimately much more about like dating and the modern, conception of dating, especially as it pertains to like how dating culture has evolved with the internet and dating apps and things like that. It's largely about like preferences and what our preferences are, and like does that make us a bad person if we're looking for particular things in people? And what does that say about us? And how can we put our preferences aside in dating for the broader, grander, harder to understand concept of finding someone that you love rather than finding someone that checks all your boxes. So I think from that standpoint, the screenplay is quite good. I did find the romance itself a little bit predictable, and I'll get to that in a moment. But I want to hear what you think, too.
Yeah, I really liked it. I think that it's just really well made. Mm-hmm. The characters are very believable. The score is excellent. Shout out to Daniel Pemberton, who scored Concord. He scored the game Concord, and now he's here. Mm-hmm. He's working on
and Across the Spider-Verse.
Well, yeah, I know, but I just wanted to...
Sorry.
I wanted people to recognize what I was saying.
Sure, the much more popular property that he's been attached to.
Shout out Danny P. But the cinematography and color grading and everything. I mean, it's just... The whole thing looks like a Chanel commercial or something.
Ooh, yeah.
Or like a Gucci commercial or
it's
something.
It's quite high end. I mean, it's obviously dealing with like high society stuff as well. So it looks very pretty. Same goes for Past Lives. I wonder if it's the same cinematographer, actually.
It might be. Well, I don't know. There's something about the way that in these two films, how Celine Song and presumably whoever's working on cinematography, color correction, they make the world feel a certain way. It looks a certain way. And I'm like, oh boy, I just want to be here forever. I loved watching the movie. I found it very intoxicating, just the atmosphere that it created. Especially with these certain creative decisions about the score and about the lighting and cinematography and things that I just thought were so beautiful. And then you have three actors giving some really great performances in this. I think for Chris Evans and Dakota Johnson, I'm like, okay, these are probably two of their better performances.
Yeah,
I mean, the caliber of movies that I associate them with does not really preclude them to having big emotional moments like this movie does. But I just really, really liked it. I thought it was like philosophically fascinating with the ideas that it was posing about relationships and dating. And I just thought it was very, very good. It's not as unique as Past Lives was. I think Past Lives posits a romantic relationship that is unlike others I had seen in film before, whereas Materialist does feel a little bit more standard, as I think you were saying, like predictable. But ultimately, when the movie's really well made and I'm enjoying all the actors, then I'm a happy little camper, sitting in the theater.
That's true.
Kicking my feet and smiling like, oh boy, there goes Pedro Pascal, yippee.
It is certainly a lot. First of all, like a lot talkier than Past Lives is. You get many more scenes of characters like overtly talking about what they are looking for in dating and what their goals are for dating, and now that they're in their 30s, late 30s, I think all these characters are. Pedro Pascal might be a little bit older. Whereas Past Lives is a lot more about like the unspoken yearning and things like that, and so the filmmaking changes with that. This is a lot of conversations, and so we have some high profile A-tier actors here to deliver all these things. I think, Tucker, I'm gonna pose a question to you. Who do you think gives the best performance in the movie? I'm gonna go Chris. I think Chris Evans is the best performance.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think Chris Evans is. Let's see how this question rubs you, Tanner.
Okay, you're gonna answer my question with a question. Okay.
No, I agree with you.
That's a fair
my
answer.
answer is also. Yeah. I think in some weird way, both Chris Evans and Pedro Pascal end up feeling kind of underutilized within the movie.
I understand that.
Chris Evans' character doesn't get like major screen time until the last like 30 minutes of the movie, which is interesting. And then Pedro Pascal also, especially for the middle of the movie and of course the end, he just kind of disappears. And so the movie is much more about Dakota Johnson's character Lucy navigating her job as ostensibly a Hitch type matchmaking character.
True.
And then these two relationships. Then it is about the three characters. I thought maybe it would be a little bit more balanced in terms of how much we learned about each character. But looking back on it, though, I think the scenes that they're in are great. I was like, I really want to learn more about Harry and John in particular.
Yeah, I totally see that. They do kind of get put in the box when we're not playing with them. Essentially, it is not like the rom-com version of this story would be, where we're like there's a scene where she's going on a date with them at the same time or whatever, and they can't know about it. She's running back and forth between different parts of the restaurant or whatever. Yeah. Like those scenes don't exist here. It is largely like she is interested in Pedro Pascal because let's lay it out here. At the beginning of the film, Dakota Johnson, we learn, was a poor aspiring actress living in New York City with Chris Evans in their youth, but when they were in their 20s. And she realized something about herself. She realized that she has expensive taste, both in the life that she lives and in the men that she wants to be with. Chris Evans, again, poor actor guy, so there's a scene where we see essentially their breakup in the middle of the street with Dakota Johnson saying, like, I feel like a bad person for saying this, but I kind of don't want to be with you because you're poor. Yeah. If you fast forward to the modern day setting of this film, and she is, living the life of a high earning career woman in New York City, and then she meets a multi-billionaire Pedro Pascal, probably, who's in like private equity or something. And they have an overt conversation about that. She's like, what I look for in men, I want them to be rich, and it'd be nice if they were also super, super stinking rich. And so that is the setup for the character. And this is why I get into it being a little bit predictable as well. It was like, when that scene happened, it was like, okay, well, she's going to end up with Chris Evans, obviously. Yeah. Because there's so much talking about, like, how she really only wants, like, wealth in men, how wealth is important to her, how status is important to her, how she, likes Pedro Pascal because he can take her out to fancy dinners and things like that without a second thought. And I was like, well, that can't be the end note for this character, because for as much as the conversations are about that in the movie, like, that does ultimately make her, in the eyes of the general audience, like, a vain character. And we can't just end the movie with, like, affirming that. So I'm like, so she's going to end up with Chris Evans at the end. She's going to learn that money isn't everything, that her preferences, like that stuff, aren't everything, that she still has this, vestigial relationship with Chris Evans, this unresolved thing, that she loves him.
Yeah, you're definitely right. That element of the movie is the most by the numbers. Okay, I saw this coming. I think the reason why that doesn't end up becoming too much of a criticism for me is that the way that she is pushed to wrestle with that, I think, flows very naturally in the screenplay.
I would say so.
Because it's not, it becomes less about I'm into rich guys and that's an issue. Rather, the way that I have thought about relationships in the past and told other people to think about relationships in the past is harmful and largely dehumanizing. I think some of the best moments in the movie are when people are discussing romance, but specifically when they're talking about how being with a romantic partner and understanding someone, being comfortable with someone, one of the biggest parts of that is feeling like you're valuable. And of course, that is like almost cartoonishly exaggerated with these people that think about dating prospects as stats, as checklists, as boxes to check, as they consistently say. But the idea that you want to feel valuable when you're with someone else, whether that is because they want you for these more materialistic things, or
wait a second, hang on a second,
hold on, or because they care about you, they value you as a person. Watching Lucy come to understand that she does go through a character arc, which goes from telling everyone all you need to do is check the boxes. You know, it's about the math of lining things up.
Right.
That is also a little bit like, you know, stock standards. Like, okay, all right, the matchmaker person sees it as math. But then watching her come to terms with that, I do think is emotionally cathartic, especially for the character. Though, and Tanner, I wondered what you think about this. I guess, sorry, people, spoilers for Materialists. The moment that pushes her to realize this, I think is kind of, I'm not going to say dorky in like a corny way, but like it feels cartoonish. Like, so what ends up happening is that one of the people that she set up on a matchmaking date gets sexually assaulted on the date, and she like has a Jaws
this is the moment.
What the hell? People can get sexually assaulted on a date? What the hell? I'm like, why is this moment like hitting you so hard as someone who has been on many dates, and like it feels like she is totally naive before that, and then she goes to this, and of course it is something that would like upset you as a person.
Of course,
but
especially
she like goes to her boss. She's like, "Does this happen before?" It's like, well, yeah, you work for a dating company. Like, I'm sorry, but like that's just the reality of it.
I think that maybe perhaps this character has set up some sort of idealistic scenario in her head where like they are you know, they're peeling off the top crust of like the dating pool of New York City.
Because they're paying like thousands of dollars to use it.
Exactly. So like that has never been an issue. Maybe if we're pointing to some classism, some latent classism that's in her thinking. That like that would never
Rich
be.
People can't sexually assault each other.
Well, yes, of course. There's no high profile cases of that happening. But I definitely see where you're coming from, because that moment, that being the catalyst for her like reckoning with becoming disenfranchised or disenchanted rather from like her conception of dating, does feel a little gauche, maybe a little bit in poor taste. But like, I think the movie does go through pains to like, we return to this issue again and again of treating this woman with kindness and empathy and things like that. Lucy continually talks to her. I mean, a scene towards the end of the movie is directly confronting this idea of like them finally sitting down and reconciling what has happened, reconciling like the idea of love and everything like that as the themes have evolved over the course of the movie. But when that moment hits, I'm like, it's truly the moment where I was like, oh, this is like not a rom-com, because it's treated with a lot of seriousness, as that obviously should be.
No, definitely. And to be more specific, it's particularly the way that scene happens and the way that she reacts, I feel, is a little over the top. Like the movie to that point it's not realistic about dating, because these characters are their wants and needs are like cartoonized a little bit. I think probably the rom-commiest comedy element of the movie is these like little half interviews we get with people that are like, here's what I want out of a person. I want this, I want this, I deserve this, I deserve that. And that's like, that is definitely played for laughs, where it's like, oh, look how ridiculous the desires of these people are and how much they're limiting themselves. And like, I guess kind of like how highfalutin they think of themselves.
Yeah.
And so that moment coming out of nowhere and her reacting that way, it made me kind of think that she was maybe not as smart as I thought she was, because someone in that situation that is seemingly as jaded about dating as she is, where it's like, okay, it's about the math. These things are, going through the motions. You're setting up like dozens of people a week or whatever. The fact that one single instance of sexual assault, which is a major problem, but within this line of work that she had never like heard of that happening before, like that doesn't feel reasonable to me.
I see what your sticking point is here.
What I was hoping for, what I think would have made it stick a little bit better is if something more serious had happened, frankly, because. I mean, I don't know. It's odd. I feel like the movie takes itself very seriously, and then in that moment, I'm like, this doesn't feel like it doesn't. I don't know. It almost doesn't feel earned or something. And maybe I'm not communicating that properly, but
sure.
What I will say is that it's only that one moment. I do think that the way the movie plays into that for the rest of it, you talk about these couple of scenes where she's interacting with Sophie, I think are some of the better scenes in the movie from a screenwriting perspective, from a performance perspective. I've actually learned to really appreciate the performance of the actress playing Sophie, especially in that last scene that they have together, where they're at her apartment. And they share this really tender moment where they hug, and I'm like, okay, that's a very emotionally earned, cathartic moment, well written between these characters. So I ultimately do like where the movie goes, because it does these scenes that, again, I think we're talking about maybe hitting certain beats that you might have expected, but it just does them really well. And ultimately that's why I really do like this movie, is because I'm like, okay, I know these things that they're going for. I understand these character archetypes, but when it's Pedro Pascal and Dakota Johnson giving two excellent performances and sitting in this beautiful restaurant, and they're like leaning in and talking to each other. My favorite scene in the movie is this like sushi restaurant scene or whatever, where the camera's slowly zooming in, and this is one long take, and they're talking about all this stuff, and they do this fascinating thing consistently with the sound design in this film that I thought was really amazing, where background noise entirely fades out. And so it's almost, I leaned over to my friend and I said, this is almost like ASMR. Like they're like talk whispering to each other, but it makes it more like intimate, and the background sound is completely faded out, and you get this really nice shallow depth of field where the lights are like bloomed out in the background very softly. And I'm like, I kept having these things in my head. I'm like, man, this is like sitting in a sensory deprivation tank. Like, I'm just sitting here and just like, I'm just experiencing this. I feel like I'm floating. The music is very ethereal and like, I don't know. It feels like you're listening to calming rain music to sleep to or whatever. And I'm just like, no, this is a really fascinating, intoxicating, I think I used the word earlier, tone. Particularly through the sound design, color correction, cinematography. Like, it creates this really distinct and like enveloping atmosphere.
Yeah, I think Celine Song is good at these kind of sequences. I mean, we saw her do a similar sort of thing in Past Lives, where obviously the conversations are a lot less verbose. There's a language barrier in a lot of those scenes, obviously. But as I mentioned already, that is a film that is a lot quieter. This is also a quiet film, but the script is a little bit more beefed up in terms of the conversations that are constantly happening, like this one that you're talking about. But she just has an ability to make you hang on every word, as do the stars of this film. They are talented performers. Dakota Johnson gets to claw her way back into the public consciousness after Madam Web, basically, because she is like a pretty interesting screen presence. She is not as like immediately charismatic or personable as other female leading stars in romance films or rom-coms or whatever.
Yeah.
She has a little bit of staidness to her, a little bit of perhaps walls between her and the audience, or her and her screen partners, that I think some people, and in the wrong movies, can be misconstrued as like bad acting, stiffness, things like that. But I think in a good movie can be twisted into like, this woman is a little bit, not out of her depth, but like a little bit uncomfortable. She has certainly put up walls for the people around her. She's not comfortable with super letting people in, as she tells others to do. As she tells others to be honest with her and be honest with their partners and things like that. She's maybe not fully comfortable with that either. She doesn't want to be even honest with herself, maybe. Which I think Dakota Johnson is good at in this movie. And then Pedro Pascal and Chris Evans just kind of have to be like, hey, I love you and I want to be with you. So why are you not letting me into your life a little bit?
Yeah. We didn't really talk about Pedro Pascal. He's just the most charming motherfucker ever made.
Of course.
I mean,
he has to be suave as hell.
Have I seen him in a romance movie before?
Let's check him out. Let's check him out here a second, Tucker.
Tanner, let's check Pedro Pascal out.
Let's take a look at him. I don't think he's really been in a romance film.
Yeah,
ultimately.
You're right. I'm just looking quickly. No, I'm certainly not one I've seen him in.
No,
which is, I think he does an excellent job here. I mean, he's I think one of the movie star name actors that like I will go see in anything now. He chooses really interesting projects, and he just kills it in this movie. I think that he's actually the one that I think escapes the maybe feeling a little bit by the numbers as a character the most, because I was expecting there to be a dark twist to his character the whole time. I'm like, all right, what's this guy's problem?
Yeah,
where are the red
what's
flags?
the hold up? Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. And it doesn't really happen.
No.
The only thing that ends up happening is that he is more materialistic than maybe we initially thought.
Right.
But not even like in an aggressive way or a harmful way.
Yeah, he's
more
just
of like we're not right for each other kind of way.
Yeah, so I want to talk about this scene because this is one that didn't fully work for me.
The leg scene?
Well, the leg thing is one thing, because it's set up at the beginning that she talks to Dasha from the fucking Red Scare podcast about like, hey, you know that there's like you can get like a surgery to make your legs longer, or they break your legs in Turkey and they make you taller or whatever. And then it's revealed that Pedro Pascal had that done. So he's vain and things like that. But that scene didn't feel like a super satisfying reckoning to me, a reconciliation to me. It just kind of felt like Dakota Johnson saying, I don't love you, and Pedro Pascal being like, damn, all right, that sucks, but okay. Yeah. Like I don't feel like he got to explain his feelings towards her enough.
Definitely, yeah.
Well, Chris Evans gets like basically like 3 scenes to do that at the end of the movie. So that left me a little bit, at sea with like, what are we doing with his character? What is the point of his character? Yeah. Because he like immediately like has a connection with Dakota Johnson, with Lucy, and they have great chemistry together. But then they sort of just wrap it up in, we checked each other's boxes, but that's not love. I was like, I don't know if that's fully the vibe I was getting from them. There was like an unspoken thing.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think it's because the reason that scene feels weird is because we haven't really seen him for a good chunk before that scene happens. It's mostly Lucy reconciling with her work and her job and the matchmaking thing not going as well before that. So there's probably a good 15 minutes or something like that where we haven't seen Pedro Pascal before that scene happens. And I agree. I think I was, as that happened, I'm like, oh, well, to this point, nothing has gone really wrong in your relationship. Yeah. Like you have been very sweet to one another. And yes, Pedro Pascal is... And then, of course, it is revealed that he is more into it for the status. But I do feel like they cared for one another. And so having this moment where it's like, and I don't love you, like, let's just break it off, and then he doesn't show up again. I agree that it felt a little out of left field and could have been like leaned into a little bit more, or geared up to a little bit more. But that also has the funniest moment in the movie where he squats down.
Yes,
yeah, that got a gigantic.
Oh yeah, big time, big time. Yeah. Is there anything else that we haven't talked about in this film, Tucker? In Materialists that we want to hit on?
No, I don't think so. Yeah. I mean,
I think. Well, I will say the opening scene threw me through a loop. I did not anticipate us to be opening on some cave people on like their first marriage or whatever, which comes up a couple of times. It did cause a woman sitting next to our friend Joe to lean over and ask him if this was Materialists.
Yeah. Oh, that's so good. Oh my god.
Yeah. I think that's what she asked anyway, because it's that scene, and I just see her like lean over and like ask him a question, and he just nods. I was like, yeah, I understand. Lady.
Yeah.
Like, this is not how you anticipate the movie would open.
Yeah, me too. Yeah. But yeah, no. So time for scores.
Okay.
I think my thoughts have lowered a little bit throughout this. I ultimately think most of the dialogue conversations are excellent in terms of the way that they're delivered, the way that they're written. Not a lot of it feels very forced. I think we get 3 excellent performances in this, and I think the production design, cinematography, lighting, music, all of this is like triple S tier to me, especially for romance movies, which are actually usually not the best produced films.
I mean, well, first of all, we're in a dirge of no romance movies in theaters, and so they go to streaming, and so they look like stream movies.
Exactly, yeah. Mm-hmm. But this is, I mean, it's made like Past Lives, which is a great thing.
Yeah, exactly.
But the broad strokes of this movie, I think, are where it falls apart, which is interesting. I think all the specific elements are great and don't add up to something that's maybe as great as those parts I would hope. Where I do think Past Lives did, because I think it brought up more interesting themes, it presented a more unique scenario. This, I was like, all right, well, we're doing the thing about romance, and the things that these people feel and think and say fall more into stereotypical buckets. Which I think makes this movie maybe a little less impactful or unique on the whole. Whereas when I drill in on specific sequences or specific shots or specific performance moments, I'm like, no, it's a really well done movie. It just doesn't come together in the way that I thought I hoped it would. So I'm gonna say 7.5 out of 10.
Okay, sounds good. To that point, Tucker, I think what it is for me is that, yes, obviously production standpoint looks incredible. Looks better than any other romance movie, barring like Past Lives of the past of the like this decade or whatever. I think that Celine Song wrote a great movie that had great observations about like modern dating. I think that is the great strength of a screenplay for me. I just don't know if she like fully connected that with a really compelling romance movie for me. For some reason, that was the distancing factor for me. Was the interpersonal stuff going on here? I was a lot more entertained and provoked by the observations about dating culture and preferences in the modern era and things like that. Not to say that like the romance in this movie is bad. I praised the performances. I praised the moment to moment stuff here. But I think the broad strokes of that for me, the movement of that narrative left a little bit to be desired, as I already talked about with the Pedro Pascal breakup thing. So yeah, a little bit underwhelming for me from that standpoint. And just generally like a different kind of movie than I thought it was going in. So, but I was still pleasantly surprised by like the themes it was bringing up, the ideas it was toying with. For me, Tucker, I'm gonna go 7 out of 10.
7 out of 10. All right. Well, that is our review of Materialist. Tanner, I dropped the. It's cleaner that way, frankly.
Yes, that's right.
But thank you everyone for watching, and we will see you next time.